The next two will not have a paper, it's just their presentation. For times. Don't want to get, we want to do assassinations, we voted for that, we also voted for mysteries, and I kind of want to get them both in, they're really fun. So we'll just do presentations. No paper. Picture rock and roll will be a paper and presentation. Yeah,
I can't send it for some reason. I'm trying to log into my OneDrive so I can send this to you in an email and it says that.
one to me,
No, it says that my sign in is blocked because I entered the wrong password.
you broke the internet,
I did.
turn it off, reboot, come back. All right, here we go. Oh, no, we don't go. It's coming. Okay, go.
So it's about so and he's a early life. He was born in January of 1729. His parents were Italian immigrants. They came from a boat. They, um, they from the Austro-Hungary area that was called it there at the time. And they settled in um, so they used boats to get across, and they settled when he was 11. And the address that they settled in was the um, understood.
Huh?
Um, he has he has he has eight siblings. James, Raphael, Irma, Matthew, Alcadena, Ralph, and Frank. Um, Irma, she died at age 1. A little bit after this. Ralph and Frank helped Alcadena in his career. Um, later on in life. He went to Catholic school. Got expelled at the age of 14 for being a female teacher. And got expelled and did odd jobs in Brooklyn, including a candy store and a bowling alley from 1916 to 1918. And he married his wife at the age of 19 on December 30th, 1918. earlier that month, they had their only child. Swallowing seizures and swallowing was further. Um, he, he worked in smaller crime organizations. He's, um, the Brooklyn, Rivers, and the 5 points, and the 5 points, is important because, he was employed and was working under, a racketeer, Frankie Dale. He was a bartender at the Queen Island, and, Carl Inn, Cajole would, strangle him when he walks into the, when they walked into the, bars, and this woman had slashed him in the knife 3 times in the face and the left side. This woman's brother, I apologize, had slashed him on the face 3 times, gifting him a scar face, which he hated. Um, the guy who slashed his face name was Frank Lucio, and there was no specific date that was granted to what had happened. He was called Storky or Snorky by his friends and close people, and it's just that he was a sharp dresser. He preferred this much over anything else. In 1919, he left New York City for Chicago at the invitation of Terrio. Um, it was in he was a helper for importing he was imported by crime boss James Big Jim Celciano as an enforcer, and he began to work under them. He also contracted syphilis here, which he never seeked treatment for, even though it would have helped him. Um, he was a successor to Frank, because he had been shot by a gunman of the, I believe, North Side, giving Al Capone giving Al Capone, uh, the gang, um, he began in, um, he, uh, sorry. In 1923, Capone purchased a house on 7244 South Prairie Avenue, the Park Manor neighborhood in Chicago South Side, for $5,500. And as originally reported by the Chicago Tribune, the hacker Joe Howard was killed on May 8th, in 19.
Who was killed?
Huh?
Who was killed?
Joe Howard. Um, In a 1936 article highlighting Capone's career, they reported the date as May 7th. In the earlier years, his name began reporting in newspapers, and he was described as a boxing promoter. And he had a lot of odd things. He would donate to charities or things like that. And he was kind of seen as like a Robin Hood, to people. And he also had paid off the mayor and the police department in Chicago, basically against stopping him. Three headed essentially, had an essentially Italian organized crime group, and it was the biggest in Chicago. And Capone was his right hand man at the time. There was a lot of gang wars, and they happened often between the rival groups. The smaller Northside gang, which was led by Dean O'Bannon, came under pressure from the Dean brothers, who were allied with Torrio. Torrio was unhelpful in the encroachment despite his pretensions to be a settler of disputes. He arranged for the murder of O'Bannon and his flower shop on November 10th of 1924. He placed Jaime Weeks at the head of the gang and backed by Vincent Drusi and Bugs Morgan. Weeks had been a close friend of O'Bannon on the North Siders and made it a priority to get revenge on his killers. During Prohibition, he was involved with Canadian bootleggers who had helped him smuggle liquor into the U.S. When Capone was asked if he knew Rocco Perry, billed as one of Canada's king bootleggers, he replied, well, I don't even know which street Canada is on.
Do your slides match this, or do you have slides?
This is just kind of this computer. A lot of his political alliances just kind of align with it. So.
So Johnny Torrio was the head of the Southside gang, and then he had Dino Van killed. He's head of the Northside gang.
Yeah.
Homework for Torrio.
And after he was shot several times, he had handed over to Capone at age 26. He became the new boss of the organization and took illegal breweries and transportation networks that reached political and law enforcement protection. It turned like he was able to use more violence to increase revenue. And any establishment that had refused to purchase the first Capone had gotten blown up, and as many as 100 people were killed in such bombings during the 1920s. Capone was also responsible for the proliferation of the brothels in the city. He also enlisted help from members of the Black community in his operations, like jazz musicians, Milton Wilson and Ronald Hampton, and had uncles who worked for Capone on Chicago's South Side. A fan of jazz as well, Capone had asked clarinetist Johnny Dodds to play a number the Dodds didn't know. Capone split $100 in half when he had learned it. Capone also had spent $200 to accompany a jazz pianist, Earl Hines, on a road trip. I don't know, the other things for jazz. Capone indulged in custom suits, cigars, and gourmet food, drinks, female companionship. He was known for his flamboyant and costly jewelry, and his favorite responses to questions about his activities were, "I'm just a businessman giving people what they want, and all I can do is satisfy the public demand." Capone had become a national celebrity and a talking point, and a lot of things like post-race journalism took off really hard with him, just because he was always doing something. Capone based himself in Syrio, Illinois, after using bribery and widespread intimidation to take over town council elections, making it difficult for Northsiders to target him. The driver was found tortured and murdered. I'll come back to that. Right there. This was also Capone's favorite gun.
Sorry about the frisbee. Just toss it on the side.
Yeah. So yeah. And there was an attempt on Lewis's life in Chicago, in the Chicago area. On September 20th, 1926, the Mercedes used a ploy outside Capone's headquarters at Hawthorne and aimed at drawing him to the windows. The gunmen in several cars had opened fire with Thompson submachine guns and shotguns at the windows in the first floor restaurant. Capone was unhurt and called for a truce, but negotiations fell flat. 2 weeks later, on October 11th, police had killed outside the Mercedes headquarters on Banning's from his barbershop. The owner of Hawthorne's restaurant was a friend of Capone's, and he was kidnapped and killed by Warren and Brucey in January of 1927. Capone became increasingly security-minded and desirious of getting away from Chicago. As a precaution, his entourage would often suddenly show up at one of Chicago's train depots and buy up an entire Pullman sleeper's car on a train to Cleveland, Omaha, Kansas City, Little Rock, or Hot Springs, Arkansas, where they would spend a week in luxury hotels, suites under assumed names. In 1928, Capone spent $40,000 to Clarence Bush of the Anheuser-Busch Brewing family for 10,000 square feet at the home of the 923 Palm Avenue in Palm Island, Florida, between Miami and Miami Beach. So in November of 1925, Antonio Lombardo, who was Capone's, I don't even know how to say that, consultory, was
Consigliere.
Consigliere, was named head of Young Sicilia and the Sicilian American Lebanon Society. It's spelled UNIONE SICLI.
I won't make it back.
And it had been corrupted by research. It was infiltrated by Joe O'Neill, who had wanted the position himself and was Capone was responsible for Lombardio's ascension and resented all Milan Sicilian's attempts to manipulate affairs of the HO. O'Neill severed all personal business ties with Lombardio and entered a feud with Capone. He himself had severed Capone had allied with several of Capone's enemies, including Jack Zutta, who ran for twice in gambling houses together, and O'Neill had plotted to eliminate both Lombardo and Capone. Starting in the spring of 1927, and they had made several attempts to assassinate Capone. On one occasion, O'Neill offered money to Chief Joseph Diamond Joe Esposito, the Napoleon's Cafe and Capone's State Restaurant, to pursue the acid in Capone and Lombardo's suits. Reports indicated he offered between $10,000 and $35,000. And instead, the sheriff exposed the plot to Capone, who responded by dispatching the men to Shirley's bakery on the West Division Street with a machine gun fire. More than 200 bullets were fired into the bakery on May 28, 1927, wounding Aaliyah's brother and two. During the summer of autumn in 1927, a number of hitmen had been hired to kill Capone, and then Capone had killed them. Among them, Anthony Russo and Vicente Spucia, each whom had offered $25,000 by Leo to kill Capone and Lombardo. And Leo eventually offered $50,000 bounty to anyone who remained Capone. At least 10 gunmen tried to collect the bounty, but ended up dead. Capone's ally Ralph Sheldon had attempted to kill both Capone and Lombardo for Leo's reward, but Capone's henchman Frank Nitti, who becomes his successor later on, had an intelligence network that had learned to having the transaction and had Sheldon shot in front of the West Side Hotel, although he survived. In November of 1927, O'Neill had organized machine gun ambushes across Lombardio's home and cigar store frequented by complaint. These plans were foiled after an anonymous tip led by police to raid several addresses and arrest Milwaukee gunman Elio Laminato for other illegal gunmen. After the police discovered recipients of the apartments in Laminato's pockets, he confessed that Elio had hired him to kill Capone and Lombardio, leading Keys to arrest Elio himself and bring him to the South First Station. Upon hearing the arrest, Capone had dispatched only 2 dozen gunmen to stand guard outside the station and wait for the release. The men had made no attempt to conceal their purpose there, and reports of photographers rushed to the scene to observe Elio's expected murder. When released, he was given a police escort at the station's safety. He later failed to make the court appearance, and was clinically he suffered a nervous breakdown.
Oh, we gotta finish up. I don't know what you're reading. What are you reading? You listen, you're reading the stuff. But we gotta finish up. We're running out of time. So what happened to Leo and again, what happened?
Um,
I know we got.
he suffered a nervous breakdown and disappeared with some family members to Trenton, New Jersey, where his campaign.
So we don't need the St. Valentine's Day massacre. Let's just explain
He died in January 25th in 1947 and was arrested with 4. He was arrested with tax evasion with 5 counts, with 11 years imprisonment. His resting place is Mount Carmel, whatever, on his sentencing notice in the US. He had a couple names like Big Al, Big Boy, probably anyone around.
even know what he died of.
It was like a pneumonia, like lung disease. I thought it was a back pneumonia.
Did the syphilis come back? Like syphilis
I
there?
think so.
Yeah, like the brain disease. Yeah, I mean, a lot of material, but, okay, so it's eventually the key points that Torrio would eventually be killed, shot at the south side, and he beheaded. One would take over him after five with the lethal, right?
Yeah.
And then the north side gang, Dino Bam was in charge. It's Bugsy Moran to take over. And that's what Chris would talk about the St. Valentine's Day massacre kind of doing this. Anybody have a question? All right, good. Yes. Oops. Try to reload it. I think we should go. What do you want? Who else was that? What? Want to go first? Brett? Did you send yours, Brett?
Yeah, I emailed it and turned it on Teams. Oh, that's great.
Go ahead. Rick, just give me a second so I can reload it. Got it. Coming, it's coming, it's coming, maybe. All right, go ahead. Wait, I gotta move mouth. Got the mouth, good. All right, good.
Okay, I did the Gambino crime family. Before they were called the Gambinos, they were ran by Salvatore D'Aquila, I think that's how you say it, otherwise known as Toto. And he was in charge in the early 1900s. And I found a few things of him like working in a cheese importing business, but it didn't take long for him to get started in a career in the underworld. And he was kind of involved with many families, but he broke off from the Morello family with a few of his loyal followers and gained influence in Brooklyn, Harlem, Little Italy, and the Bronx. And under Toto's leadership, they're kind of known for his violence and control over various shipping ports. And they gained power quickly and became one of New York City's five families. So there's a lot of struggle for power in this family. So Toto was murdered in 1928 by Masseria family gunmen. They were kind of in fights over prohibition. And after that, Frank Scalise was appointed head of the old D'Aquila gang, but Lucky Luciano kind of came onto the scene, and once he had a lot of power in New York City, he made uh, Vincent Mangano the leader of the gang again. I think Scalise was murdered. With Mangano's lead, the organization fully controlled the Manhattan and Brooklyn waterfronts. And this is when Albert Anastasia, who I'll talk about in a second, was an underboss. And that guy and Mangano came into conflict quite a bit. In 1951, Mangano disappeared without a trace, and many believe that his own men, including the Albert Anastasia guy, had killed him. And then Anastasia ran the family after that, but he was widely controversial within the gang, and he was conspired against and killed in 1957 by, I think it was Lucky Luciano and Carlo Gambino. And then Gambino was kind of the least controversial of all the leaders. He ran the family until he died. But then there's another instance where an underboss kills boss, and that's when John Gotti kills Paul Castellano, yeah. And John Gotti starts running the family after that. Okay, so Albert Anastasia, the guy who I just mentioned, um, he was an Italian immigrant, and ever since once he got to New York City, he had a life full of crime. He allied himself with a lot of different families, the Masseria, Lucky Luciano, then after that, Vito, Genovese, and Frank Costello. But he eventually became an underboss in the Gambino family, which was being run by Mangano at this time. But he was most notably the co-founder of Murder Inc., which was pretty much the enforcement arm of the National Crime Syndicate. Like the mob would use them for like contract killings. And I found reports of them doing thousands of killings. So they're pretty busy. They're a good example of a racket. They operated in the back of a mobster's candy store in Brooklyn. I think that was in the late 20s and 30s. So that was. Oh, Anastasia eventually took over control of the Gambinos, and he had full control over the waterfronts. So this helped the smuggling business of the organization take off. But his demise would come when Carlo Gambino allied with Vito Genovese to get him whacked. Because Vito Genovese wanted to take out Frank Costello, but he couldn't without an ally. Anastasia died in 1957. Carlo Gambino, this is who the Gambinos are named after. He really strengthened the family. He demanded respect, and he was a lot more organized. I think, from what I've read. And he made everyone a lot more money. He increased profits, but kept like everything out of the public eye. So, well, they were still, some guys were still getting arrested, but Carlo Gambino was kind of out of the police's eye, at least. He worked with Meyer Lansky, which I'm sure some of you read about. He was like I don't know, what would you say he was, Mr. Partridge?
What do you mean?
Meyer Lansky, what did he? He was like a financier.
Yeah, he was a financier.
Yeah.
Like, he was called the accountant. He had a bunch of names.
Yeah, so he worked with Meyer Lansky to grow gambling operations down the eastern seaboard and into like the Bahamas and Cuba even. And he ran the organization until he died.
But Lansky was Jewish, and so he couldn't be kind of.
So the crimes and illegal activities, I just put some examples up, but multiple sources said that they participated a lot in racketeering, illegal gambling, loan sharking, extortion, fraud, and there's a lot of others. They're one of New York City's 5 families, and as a powerful crime organization, they were doing a lot of bad stuff. And yeah. Paul Castellano, his regime is kind of characterized with white collar crimes like stock embezzlement and other like big money rackets. He worked with Delacroix, who was supposed to be the new boss once Gambino died, but Gambino like surprised everyone and gave it to Castellano. And Delacroix didn't really like Castellano. A lot of people didn't like him, but he worked with some of his crews and they committed a lot of murders for Castellano. So in 1984, a grand jury indicted Castellano and 20 other members on drug trafficking, murder, and theft charges. After that, he told John Gotti that he would be in charge once he would start his prison sentence, but like I think something fell through with the trial because after that, there's just multiple reports of Castellano changing his mind and Gotti thought he was going to set him up and get Gotti killed. So Gotti didn't like him at all. So Gotti arranged for Castellano to be killed immediately, and he actually watched the hit happen across the street in a car. And yeah, his men didn't really think he was a great leader. They thought that he didn't really respect like the made men or like the soldiers. I think John Gotti, he grew up poor with he had 2 or 3 brothers, but he got started in crime right away. He joined the Gambinos, but he worked hard and he like quickly rose up the ranks and became an underboss. He disagreed with Castellano's leadership. And Castellano was sort of against trafficking drugs, which Gotti liked trafficking drugs, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, he did like it. He thought that Castellano was going to try to have him killed, like I said. So he orchestrated his boss's death, and he took over the family. And he was being arrested like a lot. He was always kind of in some headlines doing something, but he could never. No jury could ever, or not jury. Like, they could never get like an actual charge to stick on him. So a lot of people started to call him the Teflon Don, which I think is a cool nickname. But that didn't last too long. It was in 1991. They caught one of his like closest underlings, and he ratted on him to the FBI, and got him to spend the rest of his life in prison. I think he died at like 61. Okay, modern day Gambinos. Not much is known about him. Like I couldn't find that much, but I did read that Dominic Cephalou, he's been leading since 2011, And they still operate in New York City and Queens and Brooklyn. And they are kind of still involved in racketeering and loan sharking there. In November 2023, 16 other members and associates were convicted on racketeering, extortion, and witness retaliation charges. And I think that they were probably impacted a lot by RICO and new law enforcement, that's just modern law enforcement.
Feel like there's no pictures at the end, you couldn't find much.
No, I couldn't find any pictures of the new guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I couldn't.
yeah, I've looked at another time too, same guy, I'm hoping you would, but I get it now. We're pretty hard to find, this question. Couple questions.
The RICO, I can't remember what it stands for, but isn't it kind of like if you can charge one gang member, you can charge them all with something or something like that?
It's about racketeering. And what you can do, if you have one, you can force the other and say you're all part of it.
Yeah.
Instead of just having proof on one, you can fire the people. RICO is a really big law. It can be abused, but it's a big law. Any other questions? Yeah, when I was in New York City and I went into a little bodega and they were playing the numbers game there. This is in 2011? No, 2009. And I went to a bodega and they're playing numbers, legal numbering, numbers game, legal lotteries. And the guy said, "Hey, we're from the Gambino family."
Really?
Yeah. And I said, "Okay, I got good job." Yeah, okay. What up, Tabs? I think we'll start tomorrow. All right, and then let me hand back your worksheets for Dillinger. Please do. So we do have a couple questions left. We'll get it finished. I shouldn't have collected these. I am blaming society. Just one sec. Who else should I blame, right? The Gambino family. Knew I made a mistake here. Yeah, I was just trying to get the sub notes. I skipped town. I'm back. They let me back in. Despite everything. Oh, no. I wouldn't even look, and I just know Corey sits there. I didn't even look, and I knew she was gone. I'll give you. I hope you like this one. I really enjoy this one. I think it's one of the better ones. I think it is so well done. I walk over here to Andrea. Thing like that. Oh, that's what she did. Yeah, I shouldn't have said, I knew. And then I didn't realize it until literally I came, it's my fault. It's my fault. It's all my fault.
Or she's not here, she's blame it on her. Guess what? She's not even sick. Yeah, she asked my mom, I said, can I stay home? And my mom said, yeah, she's still pretty.
Let her get rid of that.
No, I told her that she was to she did. Oh,
Yeah, there's only one class we care about.
just give her enough immediately.
I'm going to.
I was scared. But, yeah.
Felton, Blue. All the classes, tomorrow, class behind. I think my list off. It'll go, I'm gonna go back through one more time.
Awesome sauce.
I can see it. Some colors, that's so neat. This big is so fun. There's another Gangster.
I might use it. That's when you do less than have. Make sure.
I'm eating everything. It'll look a little bit like an Excel. Exactly. That's not wrong. Well, I'm committed. I don't feel like. I think it'll be worse, Jim.
Oh.
I was serious about it, not realizing. That's.
So in a few minutes, we'll finish it up tomorrow. Or whatever.
I dropped my glasses at my. Oh, and. Yeah.